Evolution is the process of something changing into a new form over time. While this term is mostly associated with biological evolution, other things such as culture, society, technology, politics, and a whole bunch of other things can also evolve. Unfortunately, the process of evolution takes a long time, so it's really hard to perfectly record its effects. But luckily for us, the culture of the internet moves extremely fast. 1 month there is basically 2 years in the real world. And just like how homosexual evolved into Homo sapien, the politics of the internet have changed greatly. From the Atheist explosion, the Anti-SJW era, the BreadTube age, and finally where we are now, with a bunch of people talking about wokeness in media. I got my archaeological tools ready, and I think it's about time that I dig up these missing links to see what these different time periods were like and how we got to where we are today. But before I do that, I need to talk about the end of BCI, before Common Internet. While the internet did indeed exist in the early 2000s, the 90s, and the 80s, the overwhelming majority of people didn't have it. We were still transitioning, and only in the early 2000s were popular websites finally popping up, such as the platform you're using right now, YouTube. To make it easier for you to understand, everything before 2005 is what I consider BCI. So in the year 4 BCI, when there were only a few humans who evolved into Homo interneticus, before passing on their dominant genes, changing the human race forever, a horrible tragedy struck the most powerful nation, the good old USA, which was thought to be invincible for a very long time. Unfortunately for me, there's a good chance that YouTube might demonetize me for talking about this, so sorry if I change a few words around. 2 tourists from the middle of the East flew buildings into planes in the state of New York. The current leader of the nation at the time was the lesser brother of God Emperor Jeb Bush. He responded to this offense on American soil by declaring war on the nation that the tourists weren't actually from for some reason. Now, I do question the motives of the God Emperor using his psionic powers to put his brother in charge, but I do trust him, and I'm sure this is all part of his plan to lead humanity into the future. But to be serious for a moment, this horrific event not only shook America, but the entire world. For most people below the age of 35, this event may not seem like anything that important. It's just another horrible thing that has happened in the world. But for the people who were already full-grown adults, who had jobs, went to college, got married, and did other things, all before 2001, something like this happening in real life never crossed their minds. 2 men managed to hijack large transportation vehicles and use them to cause massive devastation in one of, if not the biggest city in the world. Imagine if in the next few years someone just hijacked a SpaceX rocket that was transporting a whole bunch of people to the moon, and they rammed it straight into San Francisco, completely destroying it. It would certainly be a key moment that would be mentioned in all of the history books. During this time in America, Christian conservatives had a lot of power, and they used this tragedy to gain even more. Jesus was ready for another round with his old rival, who is a man I can't depict. Throughout all of human recorded history, might always equaled right when it came to religion. One religion never defeated the other through debate. They always defeated the other one through genocide. Humans have always used religion as a tool, and the ones that have survived up to this point just seemed invincible. After all, they have lasted for thousands of years, so they're probably gonna last until the end of human civilization. But people were starting to get more and more sick of the Christian conservatives always inserting themselves into spaces that they didn't belong. Back then, all it took to be labeled as a Satan worshiper was to play Dungeons and Dragons, or read Harry Potter, or be born gay, along with a whole bunch of other things. But of course, the most annoying thing was how involved they were with politics. You could never have a political discussion anywhere during that time without one of them bringing up their holy book, the one that says that the earth is 6,000 years old, that people used to live to be over 900, that every single species of animal fit on a boat a little bit bigger than a football field, that the end times are coming any day now, that they're all-powerful, all-knowing, and completely 100% pure good God will send anyone who doesn't worship him into a dimension of eternal fiery suffering. If he's all-knowing, wouldn't he know who would have followed him and who wouldn't? So in other words, he knew everybody who was going to be suffering in heck. Yeah, apparently that's the Christian's definition of pure good. Honestly, aside from a few deities from H.P. Lovecraft, some of the Chaos Gods from Warhammer 40k, along with a small handful of other characters, I can't really think of any more that are more evil than God with a capital G. The modern day parasitic religions have evolved to basically take on anything by using fear tactics, a promised paradise that you can only get to after you die, strict rules for its worshippers to follow, and you know what? I don't want to be here all day. I think you guys get the idea. But there was one threat that no religion faced up until this point, and that threat was the World Wide Web and the spider atheist who lived upon it. YouTube atheism spread like wildfire. They did not have a doctrine to follow, nor a god on their side. They were completely outnumbered, and they didn't even have a small military. But they came in at the perfect time, using the tool of the internet to attack Christians at a time when a lot of people were sick of their shit. And because most of them used to be religious themselves, they knew all the weak points of their enemies and how to exploit them. Some of the biggest channels from this time were Dark Matter 2525, The Bible Reloaded with Hugo and James, The Thinking Atheist, The Amazing Atheist, Armored Skeptic, and Thunderfoot. Make sure to pay attention to those last three. They're going to be very important for when we come to the Anti-SJW section. Atheism finally managed to truly establish itself. It was the new face of counterculture, and just like all counterculture movements, it was cool, growing extremely fast, popular with the young people, and it was here to stay. All the harassment that the child abuse Christian conservatives did to Harry Potter fans, people who play D&D, and the gays, only managed to push them away from their side, causing a lot of them to join the atheist movement.
As a child, I feared you, but I am a child no longer.
Some of the most popular YouTubers were atheists. Atheism was being brought up in politics more and more, and Christian conservatives lost a huge chunk of the power they once had. The growth of non-religious people around this time was faster than it ever has been in all of history. And after gay people were finally given marriage rights, and a lot of nerds could finally enjoy their books, games, and movies without being harassed, the Christian conservatives started using the victim card more and more, with several of them realizing that they would never hold the same power they once did. Every single fantastic argument they thought of was torn to shreds, chewed up, and spit out by even the most dumbest members of the atheist movement. Christian conservatives did what they could to hold on to what they had. They isolated their children. Some of them grew up to be Christian conservatives like them, but a lot of the children, when they finally became of age, that went to college or the workforce, were able to reverse all the brainwashing their parents did to them for years, in just a handful of months. The old Christian conservatives who never used the internet still hold on to their beliefs, but they're slowly dying out. They desperately tried to get their children who left their cult to come back to them.
No! John, Luke, James, please don't leave. I don't want you to suffer in hell for all eternity. Come on, just think about all the good times we had, like the times I emotionally abused you, or physically abused you. Oh, look, there's the sun. It's in the sky. Somehow that proves the existence of my God specifically.
Now that the Christian conservatives lost most of their power, YouTube atheists started to diversify. Some of them started talking about other religions. One of the most popular to debunk was the series Spirit Science. Others started making videos debunking conspiracies. A handful of them started talking about science. And there was a whole bunch of other things that they moved on to. Atheists were everywhere at this point. There was not a corner of the internet that didn't have at least a few. There were atheist gamers, atheist bronies, fascist atheists, and even fascist gamer brony atheist. Almost every single YouTube atheist around this time believed that the atheist movement would just keep on growing until every single person in the world was an atheist. But something happened that brought all of their progression to a screeching halt. A certain ideology that was slowly growing, with barely any people noticing it. An ideology that had rules to follow, but not a god to worship, inserted itself into the atheist community. Like Christianity, it was also a parasite, but not one that the atheists were familiar with. And the name it gave to itself when it latched onto its host was Atheism Plus. It's now time that we go over the transition from the atheist movement to the anti-SJW wave. You see, the atheist accidentally created a monster. If people no longer believe in or fight for a religion, they'll find another ideology to do that with. Gays along with the rest of the LGBT having more rights. Marxists complaining about their massive college debt. And most dangerous of all, third wave feminism. Now that there wasn't enough of their apex predator, Christian conservatives for them to fight with, it was the the exact perfect storm to create intersectionalism, an ideology that uses multiple different minority groups as a weapon to fight against the conservatives. And by conservatives, I don't just mean the Christian ones. I'm actually referring to anyone who stands in their way, or even people who just want to stay neutral and sit on the fence. The only thing the intersectional feminists needed was the atheist minority to be on their side. With the power of their argumentative skills, nothing would stop them. The group Atheism Plus was full of atheists, no doy, who said that in order to have lack of belief in a deity, you also need to fight against homophobia, sexism, racism, and a few other types of isms, but that part was in small print. Most atheists were pretty on board with this. After all, the tool of religion was used to oppress women, LGBT people, and basically every race and ethnicity of human under the sun. These guys were essentially their brothers in arms, and was also a golden opportunity to spread atheism to the LGBT, feminism, and the other groups. Well, remember when I mentioned the fine print of the other isms? Well, it didn't take long for the atheist movement to find out what those things were. They weren't allowed to talk about Islam, Judaism, or Eastern religions, and they had to be extremely tolerant of those who had New Age beliefs. If a woman made an accusation against a man, she immediately had to be believed on face value without any proof. For many atheists, being told that they had to believe in something with no proof sounded all too familiar to them. Many of them turned against Atheism Plus, but a few of them, like the True Puka and Steve Shives, turned against their atheist brethren and fought for Atheism Plus. And there are also many atheists who are uninterested in joining either side of this battle at all.
Where are you going? Fuck this shit, I'm out.
And instead just kept on focusing on attacking religion. But around the same time, the Atheism Plus schism happened. An event that is still talked about by the media to this very day started to occur. An ancient gate was open, and the games finally began. This is the start of GamerGate. You probably heard of it before, but what is GamerGate? I hear people talk about it a lot, but I actually don't know what it is. Well, obviously it started in the gaming community. And just like many stories, it all began with a boy and a girl having a terrible breakup. The boy wrote an angry blog post accusing the girl of many things, such as sleeping with games journalists so her game would get a good review from them. Like most forms of juicy gossip, many people started talking about this story, and a few of the people talking about this gossip said some pretty sexist things. Now, the girl was friends with a lot of indie developers and games journalists. She told them that what her ex was saying about her was made up gossip, and they took her side and did what they could to defend her. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, who's telling the truth, her or the guy? And what's your opinion, Mr. Just a Robot? Well, I don't know, and I don't really care. I know this might shock some of you a little bit, but I'm not really invested in a relationship of two people I don't know from over a decade ago. But the gaming journalist did something that started GamerGate. Article after article came out accusing all gamers of being horrible, sexist, racist people. Now, 99.9% of gamers who weren't even aware of this whole relationship drama that was going on, understandably became pretty pissed after being called a racist sexist. So they fired back, and then the gaming journalist returned fire. Even more gamers attacked the gaming journalist, and more games journalists attacked gamers. This kept on escalating and escalating until a full-blown war broke out. So here's a few reasons why GamerGate is just so important. During the age of the internet, basically only Christian conservatives were being attacked. It was the first time a large group of people stood up against the left-wing media and told them to shove it. It was the beginning of the current culture war that's still going on to this day, and it was the beginning of the SJW versus the Anti-SJW age. Atheists such as Thunderfoot, the Amazing Atheist, and later on Armored Skeptic, changed their content from being about Christian conservative tards to being about SJW libtards. They already had established platforms, and the gamers had the numbers. They evolved into a new species known as the Anti-SJWs. New people started joining, like Sargon of Akkad, Teal Deer, Undoomed, and even more. Now, unlike the atheist community, not everybody in the Anti-SJW club was a left-leaning atheist. Some of them were religious, some of them were right-wing, but the overwhelming majority were moderate to left-leaning atheists. The community grew really fast from 2013 to 2016. It became bigger than the atheist community could have ever hoped to be. Big YouTubers at the time like Grade A Undera, Leafy is Here, Keemstar, H3H3, iDubbbz, Filthy Frank, and even PewDiePie all started using Anti-SJW talking points in their videos. It just seemed like the common culture of YouTube, and many Anti-SJWs thought the Anti-SJW movement would keep growing until everybody on the planet was an Anti-SJW. But then something happened in 2016 that began the downfall of the Anti-SJW community. community. I've done 2 videos about the fall of the anti-SJW community in the past. There's a few reasons as to why the downfall happened. People like no bullshit, atheism is unstoppable, Blair White, and many others got exposed and bashed for a lot of stuff they did. It made people lose faith in them, and some started leaving the community. Teal Deer is gone, Armored Skeptic left, Waz Lee joined the other side then left, Crowd and T was away for a long time until he came back and rebranded, along with a few other people. Now I personally think the biggest person to leave, and the one whose absence did the most damage by leaving, was Thunderfoot. Thunderfoot is a smart and left-leaning scientist. During the presidential election of 2016, he got into drama with Sargon of Akkad. It was a long back and forth. Most people joined Sargon's side, and Thunderfoot realized that the community was going somewhere he could not follow, so he left. After him, more and more left-leaning people started leaving the community, making it teeter further to the right. The alt-right was on the rise, and because the anti-SJWs weren't fully on their side, they got into conflict with one another. Now, you see, when an SJW and an anti-SJW debate before 2016 about black people not having power in the USA, the anti-SJW would always point to Obama, as he was the current president. But after 2016, Trump was the president. Yeah, it's a little easier to argue against the power plus privilege argument when Obama's the president and not angry orange man. Hillary Clinton losing, in a lot of ways, actually caused people on the American left to become more active and persistent. The first wave of BLM was mocked by a lot of people, especially those in the anti-SJW community. Yeah, I'm gonna be real here, I was one of those people who first heard about them when they took over Bernie's stage. Remember when they were screaming in that guy's face that they were reasonable? But the second wave that started after the murder of George Floyd, people started scrutinizing the behavior of many they saw on the right, and more importantly, many in the anti-SJW community. At this point, anti-SJWs really looked bad to a lot of people for fighting against BLM for as long as they did. On top of that, around this time, Tumblr was no longer allowing not safe for work images, calm down YouTube, on their site. People started leaving Tumblr left and right. This was at first seen as a victory by the anti-SJW community. But unfortunately for them, those users didn't just disappear. Many of them migrated to Twitter, and they took their political leanings with them, making Twitter more hostile to the anti-SJWs more than ever before. The final nail in the coffin for the anti-SJWs was the rise of BreadTube. All of these things created the perfect storm and destroyed the community. Other than people like The Quartering, Short Fat Otaku, and a few others, the anti-SJW community became a small shadow of its former self. The BreadTube age has begun! At first, only H-Bomber Guy was the only person that the anti-SJWs had pushing against them, but now there was ContraPoints, Lindsay Ellis, and so many more. They became bigger than the anti-SJW community ever was. Let me prove it to you. Sargon of Akkad was one of the biggest anti-SJWs, if not the biggest. He's seen by many people as the face of the community. Now ContraPoints is one of the biggest BreadTubers, if not the biggest. She's seen as the face of the community by a lot of people. Here's Sargon's most viewed videos, and here's ContraPoint's most viewed video. Oh wait, those aren't her most viewed videos. Those are just her most recently uploaded videos, and they still have more views than Sargon's most viewed videos. The BreadTubers were growing really fast, and they were here to stay forever until everyone in the world was a leftist socialist or a communist. Unlike the anti-SJWs, their videos were of a much higher quality. Instead of spamming out videos, they made super long ones that were very well written. Now unfortunately, I was out of politics during this time because I was dealing with a lot of art commentary community drama, so I don't know everything about their fall, but I still know a few things on how it happened. One issue with any form of anti-capitalist theory, whether it be socialist, communist, or whatever else you can think of, when people who fight for these political ideologies get famous, they get rich. Maybe they won't see the political theories they fought for so long as attractive as they once did when they were poor. But even if their morals aren't shaken by money at all, some of their fans will look at them like they were sus and trust them a lot less. Let me give you an example.
Hey capitalists, you have too much money. You should give up some of it to the poor.
Well, hello there, boy. Do you have a college degree?
No, I don't.
Looks like someone doesn't know how to make money. Listen here, it's not a system of oppression just because you're bad at it.
Oh, gosh darn it. Hey there, Comrade Joe. What seems to be the trouble? I tried to win an argument against a capitalist, but I'm not very smart. After all, I came from a poor family and don't have the best education. Well, there's an easy solution for that. Go to college. It will make you really smart, and you'll be a great warrior against the capitalist. Oh, golly, that sounds like a brilliant idea, Comrade Bill. I'll go do that, thanks.
1 degree later. Hello, Comrade Bill. I have returned. I have finished my degree. Oh, sorry about that. I also studied abroad in Italy. With this degree, I am now much smarter than I used to be. I can make more money, but most importantly, I can now fight against the capitalist with good arguments.
No, you're rich now. You're going to become a part of the bourgeoisie. Why did you go to college?
How is every anti-capitalist like this? Well, no. But some are, and pay attention to this because it's going to be important later. But BreadTube's greatest individual threat was Destiny. Destiny, a debater who fought against the anti-SJWs, got into more and more fights with BreadTubers. Not only that, but he thought communism was dumb and would never work. He divided and conquered. Some even say he was the reason for the fall of BreadTube. But I believe what caused their fall the most was something from within, and that was the audience of BreadTube itself. The big BreadTubers had to walk on eggshells and always have the most politically correct opinion. Any deviation at all would be met with backlash. From Vaush saying the N-word over and over. To be perfectly honest, it felt like his fan base gave him more backlash than the right ever gave him throughout his whole career. To ContraPoint saying that she wouldn't blindly accept they-them pronouns without fully understanding them first. And many other things happened to members of the BreadTube community as well. ContraPoints and Lindsay Ellis, the two big guns of BreadTube, quit due to all the backlash, along with a lot of other people as well. Eventually, Trump was no longer the president, and people love to fight against the establishment. It takes roughly 2 years after an election, but whatever quote-unquote side that the president was on loses strength in online discourse, as the opposing side comes to be seen as the underdog by a lot of moderates. After all, the first rule of leadership is everything is your fault. Also, hating on Mr. Beast for the horrible crime of curing blind people was probably the absolute worst PR I have seen in a very long time. Now, BreadTube was weakened, but out of all the communities I've gone over so far, it's still going strong, at least in comparison to the other two. But it was time for something to come along to replace it. It wasn't an anti-communist community, or a pro-capitalist community, or anything like that. It was more so an anti-wokeness in Hollywood community, or an anti-SJW 2.0 community. Remember GamerGate? Well, we have come full circle because the media did everything in its power to prove it right. Hollywood wokeness pissed off Star Wars fans, Marvel fans, Halo fans, Lord of the Rings fans, He-Man fans, anime fans, and just so many other fan bases.
We've circled the globe, invaded 4 continents, and pissed off a lot of people.
Thanks to the remnants of the anti-SJW community like Rags, Muller, and others making videos on woke media, along with the Critical Drinker and others joining in, they created a brand new community. GamerGate pissed off a lot of video game fans, and it led to the creation of the anti-SJW community. But what Hollywood, Disney, Netflix, and Amazon Prime Video were doing to IPs was like GamerGate squared. Now, one thing a lot of people don't know about YouTube is that shorter videos normally don't do as good as the long ones, but the Critical Drinker's videos have the same number of views as ContraPoint's videos. We have now reached the present day. The media is doubling down on wokeness over and over, making the anti-woke community stronger and stronger. Now, it's not officially called the anti-woke community, but I don't know what else to call it. But what will happen to it? Well, I think it will grow and grow until everyone in the world is anti-woke. It's going to last forever! Until it doesn't. Something will come along to replace it, and things will change as they always have. I have lasted this long. Let's see if I will live to witness what comes next. What do you think it will be? Tell me in the comments down below. For once, I got requests to say 2 things by my patrons. Danger Dan wanted me to say, I see what you really are. You're pathetic. Nothing but a worthless, sniveling lump of meat. And Bloody Eclipse wanted me to say, what is a gamer? Alright, let's get to the credits.